and welcome back to Market Shares. I'm your host, Tony Blodgett. And well, today was Fed Day, not when you're watching this, but when I'm recording it. So I wanted to just touch on this really quick because obviously it's going to be old news by the time that you watch this. So I'm not going to go into everything the Fed said in the announcement today, which is December 10th. But what was interesting is we got the 25 basis point rate cut. And if you watched my previous episode a couple weeks ago with Jason Obradovich, that was predicted, right? That was already priced into the market. And Jason really walked us through kind of how you can look on Bloomberg or other services, and you'll see exactly what's priced into the market as far as future rate cuts. So there was an 80+% chance that the Fed was going to cut based on the futures market. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. Now, the last two times, which was the last two meetings that the Fed did a rate cut, interest rates got worse on those days. And there's been lots of talk about that. And I'm not going to get into it too deeply, but what was different about this one? Because when the Fed cut rates today, mortgage interest rates actually did get better. And it's the first time of the three meetings where that happened. And each time it was priced into the market with high probability. In some cases, it was greater than 100% chance of a 25 basis point cut, meaning there was 100% chance of a 25 basis point cut and maybe a 12-15% chance that it could be 50 basis points, right? Because it was over 100%. But yet the market still reacted negatively. What I think is different this time is that the Fed indicated that they would start purchasing treasuries again. And that is different from, so we're kind of, in the Q&A, he said, this isn't really quantitative easing, but it's kind of quantitative easing, right? So what he was saying is that we just have to maintain the right amount of reserves in the Federal Reserve. So we need to buy treasuries in order to do that. So we need to ramp that up in anticipation of tax day on, April next year, so on and so forth. But to me, it says that it's quantitative easing, however you want to frame it. So anyways, I think that was the biggest difference. So this was anticipated. There was a couple dissenters on the vote, which is interesting, but nonetheless, the dot plot did not change from the previous meeting. So, I wouldn't say a super eventful meeting. The challenge that we have is that the market has, the labor market is weak. There is a lot of data that was not available for this Fed meeting because of the government shutdown. So they were going on very anemic labor data to make this determination. And it'll be interesting as that information comes out for November and December jobs numbers. Did they make the right call as it relates to the labor market? I think that they did. They probably relied heavily on ADP and some of the other reports that are out there that are indicating pretty soft labor situation, right? With net job losses in some cases. So anyways, I think that continues. What is interesting and what was asked, there was a couple questions asked of the Fed about AI, and I'm actually going to tell a funny little story here about AI that's going to wrap up this episode. And but what's interesting about AI is there's two things going on, in my opinion, with the economy with AI. The biggest one, I think, and maybe not the biggest, but probably the most noticeable, is the current investment in AI infrastructure, right? These data warehouses and, all the money that's going into supporting AI. And I think that it's right now it's building, huge buildings and, these large databases to maintain all this information, but it's also going to be energy, right? What we're hearing is that you're going to see these big data warehouses also building their own, power plants, energy plants, maybe nuclear power, enough to feed their own infrastructure, but also feed the grid. And that it's going to be interesting how all that plays out. So on one hand, we got this huge investment that's kind of really juicing the U.S. economy as we invest in the AI infrastructure. On the other side, what we have is we have efficiency going up drastically. So even though you might see GDP go up, you might see productivity go up, it's not necessarily taking more people to do that. And so historically, when you would see GDP go up, you would assume there would be job growth with that. And I think what we're going to start seeing is that, you know, the typical growth that would lead to more employment might not lead to more employment because of the efficiency and productivity that AI now brings to the modern workplace. So it'll be interesting how we, you know, kind of read that, you know, going forward, and are the anticipation of jobs that we think are there because we see the growth, maybe not there in the same way. And that'll be problematic, right? Because if we can produce more and grow the economy with less people being employed, that's not great for the average, the average household across the U.S. That's going to be problematic, perhaps. So anyway, just kind of some interesting takeaways that might be different than the normal talking points that you might get around this. So I want to tell this funny little story about AI that hopefully you get a kick out of, and also I think there's some lessons in here that we could all take away. So here's the situation. I'll try to make this as brief as I can, but my son Mason is a race car driver. So when he's not driving real race cars, he is typically driving cars in video games. And I'm not a big gamer, never have been, but he really wanted me to race against him in this video game. So he's like, "Dad, you got to, you know, go install this video game on your computer downstairs, and then we can race against each other." And so I went on and I did that. It was a game called Forza Horizon 5. So I had to go and buy the game and download it and get it all set up and whatnot. And then once I got the game set up, he was going to show me how to use it. So he comes in, and I will say that I had to use AI to figure out how I could play against my son, because since he already owned the game, I thought I could just download it again and play with him. And it's like, no, you can't do that. You got to buy a new version. So AI helped me with that. Once we got it all set up, there was a feature of the game called Backstage. I still don't know exactly what it is, but apparently it's a place where you can get really cool cars that are only available in this backstage area. And so on my version of the game, it was all grayed out, and I couldn't get to that area. And he's like, "Dad, like, you're missing out on the coolest thing." And I said, "Well, there, let's just ask ChatGPT." I said, "Hey, I got the game installed, but I can't get into the backstage area." And it's like, "Oh yeah, well, that's because the backstage area is not available in Forza Horizon 5. And I'm like, "Well, I don't think that's the case. My son has Forza Horizon 5 and he's got backstage." And it said, "Yeah, it's not available on that version of the game. It's only available in Forza Horizon 4. So definitely your son is playing version 4 and you're playing version 5. And I said, "Well, my son doesn't own version 4. He only owns version 5. And I've validated that. And so that can't be the case." And it came back and said, "Well, then since that feature doesn't exist in version 5, something must be going on with your son's computer. Maybe he has some special release, or there's some, cache situation where there's information spilling over into his computer. There's really no logical explanation because that feature doesn't exist." And so I go upstairs to my son's computer, and at this point I'm like, "Okay, AI, this is a challenge." And I take a screenshot. I take a picture of my son's computer, and I said, "This is his screen showing Backstage." And it said, "Yeah, exactly. That's Forza Horizon 4. That's what the menu looks like." And I take another picture of him driving the car, and it's like, "Well, actually, that landscape is only available in Forza Horizon 5, so definitely your son is in version 5, but what's probably happening is your son has both versions of the game, 4 and 5, and he's quickly toggling back and forth between the games to make you think that he has Backstage in 5 when it's really running on 4. And I'm like, okay, I don't think my son is doing that. I'm sitting here watching him in real life. He's definitely in that game. And it's like, well, kids can be really good at this sort of thing. That's what it said. Kids can be really good at this sort of thing. It's probably that he has both versions open and he's quickly switching between. Here's how you verify that. And so anyway, this went on, you guys. This I don't want to make this a long story, but this was like an hour of my life lost arguing with AI that this feature wasn't available. So what I did is I finally went to Grok, and I said, hey, is Backstage available in Forza Horizon 5? And it's like, yeah, absolutely, it's available. And so I took that snippet from Grok and I pasted it into ChatGPT, and I said, Chat, hey, once in a while when I want to double check something, I go to Grok, and this is what Grok said. And it said, well, yeah, that doesn't surprise me that Grok said that, because Grok uses inferior data points in order to make its decisions. Grok will often rely on forums and user provided feedback to make its decisions, which makes Grok a whole lot less accurate than ChatGPT. I'm only going to use actual release notes from the manufacturer of the product, in this particular case, the game. And so I wouldn't trust Grok is basically what it said, you guys. And I'm like, this is insane, because I know that this is available. Now, long story short, what it turns out is I just had to play the game a little bit longer in order to get access to this backstage area, and that makes sense. But I wasn't going to let up on ChatGPT. So I'm like, Chat, I got to be honest with you. Like, here's some more data. I did some more research. I posted some websites to it. I even had to share, ultimately what did it? I shared a YouTube video to ChatGPT and said, this video explains that this is available. And here's what it did. It came back, you guys, and it said, Tony, it said, wow, this is like revolutionary information. I can't believe I didn't find this earlier. And I told ChatGPT, I said, look, I'm a little frustrated. With this process that you put me through. And it said, Tony, I 100% agree. You have a right to be frustrated. And what happened here wasn't a small error. It was a process failure on my part, blah, blah, blah. And then it goes into these 5 bullet points on what it's going to do better moving forward, right? So it said, you're right. I was too confident in my earlier, and I wasted your time because of my confidence. I should have moved to external verification sooner. I was emphatic that my answers were correct instead of, listening to reason and logic. Going forward here is to improve behavior. Here's what you'll see from me. And so ChatGPT made me some commitments on how it was going to do a better job moving forward. It was going to check official patch notes. It was going to check support pages, check updated logs, so on and so forth. And the bottom line here at the very end, it says, finally, Tony, thank you. You pushed me to improve, and the improvement starts right now, not someday. If there is anything you want to revisit, confirm, or verify, whether it's about Forza Horizon 5 or anything else, you will get from me more thorough research, more open-minded reasoning, and faster corrections when evidence contradicts my prior knowledge. So, you guys, A, that's hilarious to me that we went through this, but B, don't we already expect that from our AI? And here's the lesson that I took away from this, and I hope you take from this, is that we're relying more and more on using AI for so many things. This is just one silly example of how I utilized it, but it's also a glaring, obvious gap in the knowledge that this thing had, and its unwillingness to listen to me questioning it about the feedback that it provided me. And this is a reminder that we have to use logic, right? We have to use reasoning when we're using tools like AI. And I feel like I've found myself doing this, someone will tell me about a guideline or a policy, and I'll go look it up in ChatGPT, and I'll be like, no, this is what it said. I've done this with attorneys. I'm like, no, Mr. Attorney, who's actually went to law school, look, I got my answer from ChatGPT, and here's what it said. And they're like, well, it's a little bit taken out of context because this, that, or the other thing. So we got to be careful about using AI to make us think that we're smarter than we actually are, because it's not always going to give the right information. And then that could put our reputation at risk. That could, have us, looking silly, frankly, in certain circumstances. So I thought that was a funny story I wanted to share with you guys, because I use AI now all the time for the most, basic things. I'm sure all of you do too, right? I mean, who's Googling things anymore? I'm just going to ChatGPT, but this really was an eye opener at the gaps that it could possibly have, and also a reminder on how specific you need to be with the prompts. All this thing is doing is finding the first information it can find and regurgitating to you. If you want it to dig deeper, you got to tell it, dig deeper, find more articles, So you can't just rely on these tools. For me, it partly is a reminder that there's no replacement for humans either, right? We're all worried that AI is going to replace everything, and it's definitely going to make people more productive. But we got to be careful. And this was just a reminder. I want to remind all of you, use AI more if you're not. But for me, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about how to ask questions, how to interact with AI, and I don't trust it as much anymore. I'm going to question the answers that it gives me, and I'm probably going to use more than one AI source for important stuff. Not that this game was important, it's kind of silly, but there are important things I'm researching, and I want to make sure I got the information right, and I don't think you can trust just one source. So you guys, hope you got some enjoyment out of that story. I finally did open up Backstage for those of you that are wondering, and I got some very cool cars in Forza Horizon 5. I don't really like playing video games, but if it's what makes my son happy, I'll spend a little bit of time in the evenings, showing him how we do it. He kicks my butt every time, but it's fun. It's fun for him. And you guys, hope this conversation was fun for you. I appreciate you guys tuning into Market Shares, and hope you enjoyed this episode. Look, we're going to grow this podcast in 2026. So if you're not already a subscriber, but you enjoy the things we talk about, please subscribe. And if there's things you want us to talk about, if there's a direction you'd love to see us take with this podcast, I'd love your feedback. Just put it in the comments down below. And we watch those. If you're on YouTube, it's easy to do comments. If you're listening in your car on one of the streaming platforms, or if you can't always get into YouTube, we are on all the other streaming platforms, on Apple and Spotify and all the places you find podcasts. Look us up there, subscribe, and you'll see another episode from us next Friday morning, 10 a.m. Take care. Bye.